Yo, so what's poppin'? We back with some more of it. Um, this video here is basically, the Fat Tone. It's basically the Fat Tone and Mac Dre, story. Basically what happened to Mac Dre, who's responsible for the murder of Mac Dre, Fat Tone. This video is courtesy of KC is the Town. And I don't want to hold y'all too much longer. But let's get into it.
You know what I'm saying? Nigga got a damn near dog in this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Nigga rapping a soy at the same time.
Scan has completed. Warning. Issues have been detected that need your immediate...
So all my shit be straight real. I mean, everything I'm saying is real from the soil, from the roots up. You know what I'm saying? No fake ass shit. Niggas is really doing this shit up here. All this shit crack, nigga. 24/7. Drive-bys, gang banging shit, all that shit, nigga. It's the soil. Killer City, nigga. I'm repping the death, nigga. I'm still in the hood, nigga. That's the girls, man. You know what I'm saying? Nigga in the hood of the bitch. You know what I'm talking about? That's real. Houses. Yeah. Sit them up, dumping them, nigga. We got enemies in, enemies fire CD. All that shit. Just like you said, we're squashing the funk, though. Me and my niggas are squashing the funk. It ain't no playing, it ain't none of that. It's real. It's real life, nigga. It ain't no just rapping, nigga. We been through this shit. Nigga curb serving and doing it big. Back when my nigga Boom was down there hustling. 24/7 in the gym. So I can speak, you know what I'm saying? All through that motherfucker. It's real, cuz we rapping the soil, nigga. KC, nigga. Better get up on that Fat Tone, nigga. Rap hard to death. Fuck the world, nigga. 5-1, tatted for life.
KCisthetown.com. This is a story about two legendary rappers, Fat Tone and Mac Dre. This story begins when we were kids. I grew up with Fat Tone on 51st and Euclid. Back in the 90s, we would hang out on the block and chill. Sometimes we would run around and be messing with people. You know how kids act sometimes. While we were outside on 51st and Euclid as kids, you would see Crips fresh from Cali hanging on the block too. They wore blue and white flannels and blue Dickies and blue and white Chuck Taylors or Nike Cortezes. And some of them would be kneeled down in this gangster pose, just chilling. We had a lot of fun back then. As a young boy, Fat Tone went by the name Big Bank. He was so big, he loved to have change in his pocket. Anthony's mother lived in South Kansas City, but as a single parent, she dropped Anthony at his grandparents' house near 50th Street in Euclid while she worked. He always loved to go to grandmother's. His grandfather, Fred Jones, logged more than 30 years as a chef at Crown Center. And Jeanette Wright knows that the place where she dropped off Anthony each day is the heart of a territory claimed by several notorious street gangs who call 51st Street home. But she says a boy in the housing development near her South Kansas City home was actually a worse influence on him. Fat Tone loved to rap and write. He never really liked to go out and play hardly. He just wanted to sit home and write. Anthony's dreams were big too. He told his mother he'd support her with his music. We're not going to have nobody helping us. I'm going to help us by any means necessary. Still, she acknowledges that Fat Tone gravitated toward a group of boys in his grandparents' neighborhood who claimed to be 5-1 gangsters. The gang they started when Fat Tone first started rapping, she says. Anthony Watkins broke into the rap scene in the late 90s, appearing in 1998 on the first 2 tracks of Mr. Stinky's debut album, Armed Criminal Action, and on several other KCMO releases. He soon caught the attention of several Northern California heavyweights, such as Sebo and Killer Tay, who became Tone's mentors. It was only natural that a young Anthony Watkins would look to Rich the Factor as a role model. When Rich was making his historic trip to see JT the Bigger Figure, Fat Tone was in grade school. Anthony went so far to tattoo an elongated 5 on one beefy arm and a 1 on the other. Again and again, Tone would break the Dr. Dre rule of gangster rap. Never do what you sing about. But for FT, lyrics and life were linked. He raps real life, Aunt Jeanette says. Every rap Anthony has made is real. This is the way we live. In 2001, as he was turning 20, Tone scraped together some cash and went to California. what JT the Bigger Figure had done for Rich, a Sacramento rapper named Daniel Killer Tay Curtis would do for Fat Tone. Tone came back with his first CD. Killer Tay presents Fat Tone, the vet. Now Tone had that California glow and the status and burden that came with it. That gave him immediate credibility.
That's dope. See, I never knew that Fat Tone had that West Coast, Northern Cali Bay Area connection like that. You feel me? I never really heard of Fat Tone actually until the passing of Mac Dre. But as you see here, Killer Tay presents Fat Tone. You see Mac Dre's featured on the album. Sugar Wolf featured on the album. Messy Mar featured on the album. So like the Bay and KC, Ben had that connection. I always knew the connection was there, but like Fat Tone was like unknown to me.
But what Rich had made look so easy was actually hard work. Now Tone had a reputation to live up to. He had to earn money to look the part. Rich the Factor was more of a John Gotti, Priceless Diamond says. Tone was more livewire, more flamboyant. Tone would rub it in your face. He had money, and he liked to show you he had money, Jamisha Spencer says. She said the two of them hustled to distribute Tone's first CD. They went on road trips to Wichita, Columbia, and other nearby cities and towns to promote his music, passing out posters and selling CDs from the trunk. Tone's reputation preceded him, and Jamisha's friends questioned her choice. People were like, "Why are you messing with him?" Jamisha says. I'd say, "He's good to me." Then I found out I was pregnant. I was like, "Oh my God," I just stayed with him. Jamisha Spencer says Tone supported her and the baby, Anthony, who is now around 19 or 20. He didn't even want me to work, she says. I've never worked at all. But devoted family man wasn't quite the image Tone cultivated. His lyrics were a degree more violent than Rich's. I'm a vet, frothed Tone to start Natural Born Killer. The first song off his first CD. 223s to the chest, should have worn your vest. That's how it is when you fucking with a killer from the Midwest. The veteran of the streets suffused his album with stories of violence. Track after track recited tales of shootings and vengeance. He vowed that his enemies would be ran over, walked on for fucking with Fat Tone. He's a killer city gangster. Fat Tone was into robbing drug dealers. People used to be fanned out and spooked at the same time. I seen this with my own eyes. Imagine Debo in a Corvette, rolling around. If he knew you was eating good, Fat Tone was gonna get you. Like King Von, Fat Tone had hella stories attached to his name. Like almost every time you heard a scandalous story, Tone's name was attached to it. FT robbed a lot of male groupies and KC ballers. Fat Tone used to come through hanging out the window, blicking on beat. FT came back from Cali with a new form of rap, funk music. Kansas City was loving Tone because he made fire music and he was living his raps. Fat Tone's clout was growing at a rapid pace after he shot a pregnant woman in her stomach. KC was really loving him after that. When he beat that case, it was like when King Von beat that body. KC was going crazy. KC is still playing his music every day.
Watkins has a lengthy criminal history, most recently arrested earlier this month. He was also charged with the murder of pregnant teen 3 years ago, Shamika Posey, but charges were later dropped. Now people both outside and inside the rap world want the violence to stop.
That's not needed. If you're going to do this particular music for your particular income or whatever, do it. But keep out the violence, keep out the madness and the ignorance.
The news channels love to do stories on Tone. Like I said, KC was and still is loving FT. In 2001, shortly after his trip to California, Tone was arrested and charged with a double homicide in connection with a drive-by shooting that killed a pregnant woman and her unborn baby. He spent 9 months in jail before the charges were dismissed. Jackson County prosecutors complained that the witnesses refused to cooperate. 12 said, every shooting that happened in Kansas City, you would get calls saying, Fat Tone did it, Fat Tone did it. His name always came up. Tone's second album, also produced by Killer Tay, was titled The Stick Up Kid. Its first song sums up his thoughts on the arrest. He used to wear his murder charge like a badge of honor. His next album cover featured a picture of a tombstone with the name of a man he accuses on the disc of ratting him out. In the early 2000s, Fat Tone was considered one of the hardest to come out of KC. FT is legendary because he created funk music. Funk music is Kansas City's trademark sound. The best rappers in KC are funk rappers like Two Times, Big Body Gangway, Two Gun, Deej, Delio, They Do World, Nelco, MB58, Four Nick, Lindell, Ray Money, F.A., J Boogie Tesworld, and Young Cat. Funk music is like drill, but with a different name. Fat Tone also created the phrase, Killer City. Some of his former associates say FT wasn't as tough as he claimed in his music. They say his rap personality was stolen from the likes of other 51st Street gangsters. 51st Street OGs resented the way Tone made himself sound tougher than he was. Loudmouth crybaby ass, Long says, describing a young kid who first began showing up at his grandmother's house. He was a shit starter. His mouth got him into a lot of shit, so he was always getting ran about the neighborhood and would go lay low at his mother's house. He ran to her, let shit die down, and came back and apologized. Fat Tone wasn't hardcore enough for Long and some of the other 51st Street gang members, particularly its leader, Stephen Wright Jr., no relation to Fat Tone's mother, and Jeanette Wright, who police accused of being a one-man crime wave in 2000 and 2001. Still, Tone gained a reputation. He boasted arrests for arson, weapons, and robbery. 5'1" gang member Rashawn Long, who served time for murder, laughs as he remembered dodging bullets fired at him by young Anthony Watkins. It was 1997. The two young teenagers had a disagreement over a dice game. The argument escalated. Finally, Long told Watkins he wouldn't have anything to do with the young rapper anymore. Long remembers sitting on his grandmother's front porch with her friend a few days later when a car drove past and someone inside opened fire. Long chuckles, saying he knew it was Watkins trying to act tough. He was running from me, Long says. I was going to fuck him up. Long portrays Fat Tone as a coward only tangentially involved in 51st Street gang affairs. But police say that Fat Tone's involvement was deeper than that, especially after Long was convicted of murder in 2001 and 51st Street leader Stephen Wright was arrested in 2003. Fat Tone filled the void after Wright was in custody, KCPD believed, consolidating his grip on the gang. Fat Tone was scheduled to appear October the 17th, 2003 at Millennium Club as a local talent on stage with California rappers Killer Tay and Sibo. In the wee hours of October the 17th, Tone headed to KKFI 90.1 in Westport for an interview on Cool Wayne's hip-hop radio show. He was joined by his manager, Charles Littlejohn, and rappers Sibo, Killer Tay, and Lil Psycho to promote that night's show, called the Kings of Underground. Tone was the only KC native on an otherwise California bill. Fat Tone, Killer Tay, and Sibo got on the radio talking bad to the ops. They was dissing and challenging the ops live on air. They were boasting that their ops wasn't about no action, and the ops called into the radio station, making death threats in real time on the airwaves. Like, y'all ain't gonna make it home tonight. We right outside. FT had ops from gangbanging and ops from all the ballers he robbed. The radio station phone was ringing nonstop. It was a wild show that night. Around 3:10 a.m., after the radio show ended, the group climbed into a 2002 Ford Excursion. Little John was driving. Sibo was in the passenger seat. Killer Tay sat in the back seat on the driver's side. A little Psycho rode in the middle of the back seat. Fat Tone was in the back seat on the passenger side. The excursion turned south on Main Street as a black F-150 pickup drew even with it. Little John stated, "We was rolling, and a black Ford pulled up right to Tone's window. It bumped out. We took off. Shit, they was on it." Two assailants opened fire with a handgun and an assault rifle. They started shooting the handgun first, and then they started dumping with an AK or something. I'm like, damn, I don't want to tear my shit up, so I rolled it up. Little John said he gunned the engine and raced down Main Street. Bullets and glass flying. Shooters hit the excursion with over 100 bullets. Contrary to some reports, though, nobody returned fire. Little John told the media, "Niggas handled everything like soldiers. There wasn't no hollering like bitches. Niggas was just like, go, cuz, go. We was just getting out the way of the gunfire and shit. That was that. If we had guns, ain't no way in hell we would be running. We would have pulled over and we would have got down. But we was naked, man." The excursion stopped at 61st Street in Maine. Somebody called 911. Witnesses saw the pickup speeding across state line with its lights out, but the drivers managed to elude Prairie Village 12. News crews swarmed the scene.
That's crazy. So Sibo, Killer Tay, Fat Tone, and his manager, another rapper, was almost killed in the same car together. That's crazy. I didn't know. Like, so Fat Tone, Bay Area, Northern Cal connections goes deeper than like we thought. Like, well, then I thought, I don't know if everybody else knew this already, but like I said before, like Fat Tone, I didn't hear of a Fat Tone until the passing of Mac Dre. Like when I heard Kansas City rap, it was Rich the Factor. You know what I'm saying? So that's crazy.
Only reason the media got involved, man, was because we was in a white neighborhood. If I would have gotten to the other side, the media wouldn't have given a fuck, Little John says. As many as 150 rounds were reportedly fired, though the number was likely far fewer. Fat Tone, who had been sitting behind Little John, was hit twice. The police report cited at least one gunshot wound to the torso. Little John reported that Tone was hit in the ribs and leg. Tone was taken to Research Medical Hospital and listed in critical but stable condition. KCPD was unable to solve the crime. In an interview after the shooting, Sibo compassionately told the media, "They got my boy twice in the back. We was in a clean-ass excursion sitting on 24s and shit." The attack changed Tone. It made him more leery to watch his back and always be looking out for people. He wanted to make sure he had the ups on the ops. One up top, FT was ready for whatever. His next album included a photo of him in his hospital bed, flipping a bird like the iconic Tupac Shakur. It's called keeping it real, Wayne says. If you're rapping about it, you have to be about it. The streets will quickly out a rapper who doesn't live the life he raps about. In underground music, what the streets say goes, Wayne says. But I don't want you to get the idea that you have to be a robber to sell CDs, but it helps. The success of both Rich and Tone went gun and holster with their reputations as legitimate gangsters. Fat Tone was eager to learn about the music business. Whatever his street life entailed, Tone had shown the ability to switch gears when he was talking about business. Fat Tone was very professional when it came to handling business. He would have been a 9-digit millionaire and one of the biggest rappers on earth if he was still alive. Fat Tone was the Jay-Z of Kansas City. Then Mac Dre came to town. He'd been here often. Mac Dre had gotten as much out of the Bay Area Kansas City connection as anyone. He even rapped about it on Tone's first CD. KC niggas like me, he says over and over in this high-pitched whine. He had a great time out there. People loved him out there, Zelnick says. KC outsold Seattle and Portland. From an early age, Mac Dre gravitated toward a section of Vallejo called the Country Club Crest, an out-of-the-way neighborhood long known to outsiders as a hotbed of drug crime and violence. But to some, it meant much more. Sleep Dank, a Vallejo rapper and friend of Mac Dre's, was born and raised in the Country Club Crest. He remembers first meeting Mac Dre in 1986. When Mac Dre came to the Crest for the first time, he just got addicted. His mom didn't want him out there, but he didn't want to go home, Sleep Dank says. Dre got jumped into the Crest. Motherfuckers would try to beat him up because they were jealous of him. He went through a lot. Mac Dre's name pays homage to another one of Vallejo's musical legends, Michael the Mac Robinson, who was only able to release 2 EPs under the Strictly Business Records before being shot to death in 1991. Mac Dre's final album, released only 13 days before his murder, was meant to be a spiritual successor of the Mac's first EP from 1988, The Game is Thick. This monumental EP is the quintessential Bay Area deep cut, a springboard that launched the pimp archetype that artists like Mac Dre, Too Short, Sugar Free, and E40 would later expand on, and in some cases, perfect. Sleep Dank looked up to Mac Dre. Some people just wanted to sell drugs and do all that, Sleep Dank says. Dre was just straight music. He knew he was onto something, so he stopped doing anything dirty. That's a tip I took from him. Even if it's a controversial statement outside of the Bay Area, Mac Dre belongs on the top 5 greatest MC list. His 1985 debut EP, Young Black Brother, is the foundational to West Coast hip-hop. Its single, Too Hard for the Fucking Radio, recorded while Mac Dre was still a student at Vallejo's Hogan High School. lest the world know of his unwillingness to compromise for mainstream appeal. A promise he kept throughout his career. By 1992, Mac Dre had recorded a number of EPs and began his first independent label, Romper Room Records. At the time, police were looking for culprits in a string of robberies that targeted Vallejo pizza shops. Police said there had been 29 robberies in under 8 months. The case was highlighted in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries from March 4th, 1992, where police said they believed the men belonged to a local gang called the Romper Room Crew. Less than a month later, on March 26th, Mac Dre was arrested for conspiracy to rob a bank. On that day, he decided to hitch a ride to Fresno with friends so he could meet up with the girl he'd met while performing a show 2 weeks earlier. On the way to Fresno, the car was pulled over and surrounded by officers from the FBI as well as Vallejo 12. The police say while Mac Dre was getting busy in a local motel with his lady friend, his accomplices were out casing a Fresno bank with plans of a robbery. But a local news crew had caught wind of the robbery over the police scanner and had prematurely gone to the bank. When Mac Dre's friends saw the news crew, they called it off. However, police still felt they had enough evidence to pull Mac Dre and friends over and charge the crew with conspiracy to commit bank robbery. Mac Dre was sentenced to 5 years for refusing to accept a plea deal. His accomplices were convicted of attempted bank robbery and given 10 years. They sent me to the pen for 5 years for a crime I never committed. I ain't no bank robber, but for 5 years had me thinking maybe I should have did it, said Mac Dre on his 1998 song, Life's a Bitch. Mac Dre was one of the first rappers unfairly targeted and prosecuted for crimes they never committed. Prosecutors used lyrics from the Young Black Brother EP to help establish guilt in the case. While still incarcerated, Mac Dre re-released Young Black Brother as his debut album in 1993, featuring a number of songs with vocals recorded through a jail phone. Mac Dre was released from California's FCI Lompoc in August 1996, and in the early 2000s, he moved to North Sacramento to focus on music. It was an era marked by Mac Dre's prolific post-prison recordings, where he created a dense body of work in such a short period of time that I once referred to him as the West Coast Mac B. By 2004, Kansas City and the Bay Area shared a mutual affection toward each other's burgeoning hip-hop scene, acting as a conduit to California for fledgling Midwest rappers looking to gain access to a portion of the rap community previously unavailable to them. For Bay Area artists, Kansas City became like a second home, a tour stop that guaranteed sold-out shows and fan adoration. The relationship between the two scenes is also a testament to Mac Dre's allure. In Portland, Seattle, Las Vegas, and all throughout California, Mac Dre had garnered a similar following, earning a cult-like status in local hip-hop communities across the West Coast and beyond. The stuff Bay Area rappers talked about, a lot of Kansas City people were living and talking about, says Benny Lewis, who put out a regional magazine about the hip-hop scene called Mo Cheese from 1998 to 2001. New York rapping was all about the moon and stars. It was too deep for us to really understand. The Bay Area sound also evoked memories of home, at least the Kansas City's gangbangers, many of whom were refugees of the California Bloods and Crips. They brought their music with them, says party and radio host DJ Cool Wayne. Bay Area rappers found that they had a ready audience for their CDs and they could sell out concerts in Kansas City. And while they were here, they found lucrative work on the side and visiting local studios to record verses for aspiring Kansas City rappers. All these Kansas City trappers, they started paying Bay Area rappers to get on albums $500 to $1,500 a verse, Priceless explains. The locals were convinced that having a California rapper cut tracks on their CD would give them credibility and an instant audience. But Wayne remains unconvinced that the arrangement was doing much for the Kansas City artist. In October of 2004, a Kansas City man named Damon Whitmill hoped to capitalize on Mac Dre's popularity by bankrolling and promoting a rap show at what was then the Kansas City National Guard Armory. It was the first and last time Whitmill would ever attempt to throw a rap concert, and he was able to book 3 of Bay Area's biggest acts for a show on Halloween weekend: Yuckmouth, Keek the Sneak, and Mac Dre. Damon Whitmill who sometimes went by Big D or Honey Bear, is a Kansas City native and allegedly a small-time trapper. In early October, he started a production company named Honey Bear Productions and enlisted the help of Kansas City rapper 40 Cal, who introduced the Bay Area artist to Damon. Mac Dre agreed to come to Kansas City and perform 2 live shows for a total of $12,500, with the first $6,000 to be paid immediately as a deposit. Airfare, hotels, and food while Mac Dre and the crew were in town also landed on Whitmill, who sent the contract and the first payment early in October. Once the show was booked, Mac Dre reached out to an old friend in Kansas City to see if he wanted to hang out and provide transportation for his crew over the Halloween weekend. That friend was named Savino Davila, who says he first met Mac Dre in the late 1990s through hanging out with Yuckmouth. Davila is Hispanic with brown eyes and black hair. He wears a pair of glasses in most photos, and his muscular physique reflects the time spent weightlifting during his period of incarceration. His father was murdered when he was just a kid. Born and raised in Kansas City, Davila shared a close relationship with local hip-hop artists and was a regular at shows and studio sessions around town. He's a self-described hip-hop head, and his lifestyle in the early 2000s closely mirrored the crime-fueled stories present in the genre's most popular music. While Mac Dre merely rapped about the lavish life of a major cocaine dealer, Davila actually lived it. Davila is currently serving a 30-year prison sentence in Texas at FCI Seagoville for being at the helm of a drug trafficking conspiracy that brought more than 330 pounds of cocaine into Kansas City between 2000 and 2006. He pled guilty in 2008. We were friends, Davila says. He always called me if he was coming through KC. He wanted more from me. He wanted me to get into music. Aside from a black Cadillac Escalade, Davila also owned a white van that he used for odd jobs around Kansas City. When Mac Dre reached out in early October, Davila offered to have his cousin and good friend, Harold Percy, drive Mac Dre's crew around on Halloween weekend. Percy was also a fan of the Bay Area hip-hop scene and was willing to accompany Mac Dre wherever he needed a ride. Davila and Whitmill had never met each other, with the later telling Detective Babcock in a police report that Mac Dre's transportation was provided by some guys in Kansas. Whitmill used his own money to fund the October 29th show at the Armory, shelling out the $6,000 deposit before the plane tickets were even bought. He hoped to sell enough tickets to double his money in one night. He even set up a radio appearance and a record store meet and greet to help ensure the show's success. But Whitmill was a first-time promoter and likely might not have known the amount of organization it takes to plan an event of this magnitude. And things quickly began to unravel when Mac Dre arrived. Mac Dre arrives in Kansas City. Mac Dre and 3 friends flew from Sacramento to Kansas City with a quick layover at LAX. On October the 27th, 2004, they were greeted at the airport by Davila, who picked up the group in his Escalade. Davila brought Mac Dre to his hotel, where they hung out and listened to music. Mac Dre had been enjoying the success of his most recent album, The Game is Thick, Part 2, and Davila was happy for his friend, looking forward to spending more time with him over the weekend. Before he left, Davila arranged to have Percy meet up with Mac Dre in the morning with the white van to help with transportation to his first scheduled events, a radio appearance and a record signing at a local music store. While Mac Dre made his way through the city with Percy, performing and appearing at different scheduled events, it was Whitmill who was responsible for making sure he got paid and that everything went according to plan. It was also Whitmill who scheduled the club appearances and shows for the weekend. Unlike Davila and Percy, Whitmill was the only known person with a financial incentive to have Mac Dre show up on time and fulfill his responsibilities. Mac Dre missed his radio appearance and showed up late to the record store signing at Much Music and More on October the 29th. The store's owner, Brian Robinson, was initially excited about the signing until Mac Dre showed up an hour and a half late with an entourage of 22 people. The record store owner told detectives that the fans were getting antsy and it all felt unorganized. Mac Dre left only 30 minutes after he arrived, and by the end, Robinson had regretted hosting the event. The record signing and radio appearance were both meant to promote the October 29th concert at the National Guard Armory. Whitmill bet his own money on the success of the concert and worked to lower costs by hiring members of his own family to collect tickets and provide security. Damon told Detective Babcock that Mac Dre didn't show up at the Armory until 30 minutes after he was supposed to be finished performing, causing Damon to have to rent the venue for another hour. On top of that, Mac Dre's crew of over 20 people rushed the stage mid-show, creating a security concern and causing everything to get shut down. Gary Edwin, who performs under the name DJ Fresh, was working as a sound man and a DJ for the show that night. He had to shut off the music multiple times because people kept crowding the stage. At one point, DJ Fresh said he mentioned to Mac Dre that if he told people to get off the stage, they might listen to him since they were his fans. Mac Dre responded, "That's not my job," and the club security reportedly shut it down. DJ Fresh had gotten hired to do a show about a week in advance after receiving a call from a man who introduced himself as Big D. Local crews opened up the show, according to DJ Fresh, including 40 Cal, who introduced Damon Whitmill to the West Coast artists. The show at the Armory took place on a Friday. Both Yuckmouth and Keek the Sneak left Kansas City on the next day without being paid the full amount they were promised for performing. They were told that they'd get the rest of the money wired to them later in the week. It's unclear if that ever happened. For whatever reason, Mac Dre decided to stay in Kansas City that weekend and agreed to perform at the VIP Halloween party at the former Atlantic Star on 95th and Hillcrest on Sunday night. Big D hoped the Halloween party would help make up the monetary loss from the show at the Armory. For Whitmill, it was a last-ditch effort to avoid losing a couple $1,000s over a failed weekend. The event he had planned went poorly, and he hoped this would make up for it. He even rented a limousine to transport Mac Dre to and from the Atlantic Star. Mac Dre, once again, showed up late. He stayed for only 30 minutes, according to Big D, before abruptly leaving without performing. Savino Davila spoke with Mac Dre while in a limousine in front of the club. Mac Dre told Davila he was annoyed because the event wasn't organized and because there were other local rappers performing. Mac Dre then said that he didn't feel safe and he was about to leave. Davila said he asked Mac Dre if he needed anything else. He said no, and then they both left. Savino Davila said Damon Whitmill was angry that Mac Dre left without performing. Damon called off the limousine service and called Savino to see where Mac Dre was. Mac Dre went to a local IHOP for food. The limo was gone, but the white van driven by Harold Percy was there. Mac Dre had been waiting to meet up with Damon to receive his final payment, but Damon never showed. When they left, Mac Dre got into the back of a van and instructed Percy to drive him to his hotel. They had to make a brief stop at the Baymont, a hotel where members of Mac Dre's crew were staying, before heading to the Sheraton. Mac Dre was so tired that he laid down in the back of the van, where Percy believes that he quickly fell asleep. Around 2:30 a.m., the white van was traveling northbound on Highway 71, just south of 75th Street. Davila said he was following the white van as the driver, Harold Percy, took Mac Dre back to the Sheraton after leaving IHOP. Davila seen a black Infiniti pass his vehicle and pull up alongside the driver's side of the van and unload over 30 bullets from two separate guns, an automatic rifle and a .45 pistol. The sedan violently rammed the driver's side of the van in between taking shots at it. Word on the streets says Mac Dre was blinking back at the black Infiniti. Davila said he seen Antoine, aka Papoose, hanging an automatic rifle out of the passenger side window, shooting recklessly into the driver's side of the white van, causing Percy to swerve off the highway and into oncoming lanes before crashing into a ditch where Mac Dre's body was thrown from the van. Percy claimed that he never heard a sound from Mac Dre. Losing consciousness for a brief moment, Percy claimed to have lost his cell phone in the crash and tried climbing out of the embankment where he noticed another car aggressively charging towards him. He fearfully ran the other way, eventually ended up back at the Baymont 45 minutes later, where he told the front desk worker to call the police. He then ran upstairs and told Mac Dre's friends what happened. They left immediately to go find his body. The front desk clerk would later report seeing 4 males and 3 females leave the hotel sometime after 3:30 a.m. Nearly an hour passed before 12 arrived at the accident. Mac Dre was dead when they got there from a bullet wound in the back of his neck. Detectives eventually counted 30 bullet holes on the driver's side of the van, with copper bullets still lodged in 2 of the holes. They counted a total of 3 exit holes on the passenger side as well. With most of the windows getting broken in the process, the van was completely totaled. Responding officers found shell casings from 2 separate weapons, multiple 7.62 Wolf shell casings, as well as 2 .45 caliber spent shell casings. People were interviewed at the scene, including a pair of women who came upon the accident before heading to a nearby gas station to call it in. It seems hard to believe Mac Dre could end up lying dead in a muddy ditch for more than an hour after crashing in such a violent way. More than 30 shots echoed in the night, yet nobody heard or called anything until Percy made it to the Sheridan. He died alone in Kansas City, thousands of miles away from his home in Sacramento, thousands of miles from the streets of Vallejo and San Francisco, where thousands of people still cling on to his every word. It still seems such an unceremonious way to go for a larger-than-life personality like Mac Dre, a cosmic wrong that forever threw this world off balance for those who knew him best. Mac Dre was still lying in the mud, covered with only a tarp, when KCPD Detective Everett Babcock arrived at the scene the next morning. He searched the rapper's pockets and found an electric hotel key for the Sheridan and a membership card for a 24-hour fitness under the name Andre Hicks. The crime scene spanned for several hundred feet, and it appeared to Detective Babcock to be a targeted hit. Along with dozens of bullet holes, police also found that the driver's side of the van had been rammed by the other vehicle during the shooting. What happened here had been loud and violent. Detective Babcock went to the Sheridan to search the room belonging to Mac Dre. When he arrived and unlocked the door, he discovered a group of men that were standing in the center of the room, rifling through a suitcase. He made the men drop everything, and he told them to leave. This was perhaps the first time Detective Babcock realized Andre Hicks was more than your average Kansas City murder victim. He found a computer and recording materials, as well as dozens of Mac Dre CDs originally meant for a merch term. When Mac Dre died, everything changed for his family and friends. He was the center of his community, a guiding light that acted as a beacon for those closest to him. He symbolized hope for a lot of people who came from the same poverty-stricken areas as he did. When he died, a certain momentum was killed with him, and he left a void that still has yet to be filled. Detective Babcock spoke with the promoter, Damon Whitmill, 2 times in a week after Mac Dre's murder. He asked him if he'd submit to a DNA sample to help him with the investigation. Whitmill said he needed to check with his lawyer, Kansas City defense attorney Carl Buzzy, before submitting to a mouth swab. According to the police records, Detective Babcock ran into Buzzy 10 days later on November the 22nd outside of KCPD headquarters. He asked Buzzy if Whitmill was ever going to provide that DNA sample. Buzzy said his client did not wish to provide the sample, saying that Whitmill was afraid that his DNA would be put into a database for comparisons to other crimes. The first real tip came the day after the murder, when Detective Babcock was contacted by the local media, who told them that a man had reached out with information about a car. The tipster had tried to reach Kansas City police but couldn't get through. He next called 41 Action News, the local television station, and told them that he saw 2 black males between the ages of 20 and 30 ditch a black Infiniti behind his house, get out, and then get into a faded blue van with tinted windows before leaving. The witnesses didn't see the driver. The news station contacted Kansas City police, and the car was located around 6 p.m., about 15 hours after the shooting took place, and it too was totaled. Detective Babcock saw 4 bullet holes near the back seat of the passenger side. It was clear that they were firing from the inside of the vehicle by the way the metal from the car door curled outward. There was also mud along the bottom of the vehicle. There were 3 spent 7.62 Wolf shell casings found in the back seat, the same kind located at the crime scene. There was white paint along the passenger side of the car, suggesting that it had been used to ram a white vehicle. While Detective Babcock attempted to locate the driver or drivers of the Black Infinity, whispers of a Halloween weekend altercation between Mac Dre and Kansas City rapper Anthony Fat Tone Watkins began to pick up steam in a local rumor mill. The character of Fat Tone could be viewed as a prime example of what happens when keeping it real goes wrong. In the early 2000s, he began gaining popularity for both his music and his rap sheet in equal measure. Fat Tone did little to quell the rumors of his menace. His image as a violent gangster helped him sell records, which is ironic, considering that the music was probably one of the few hustles helping Fat Tone escape a life of crime. And his music was good. His brash, violent, and honest take on Midwest hip-hop captured the ears of his Bay Area contemporaries in a way that other Kansas City rappers hadn't. Mac Dre and Sugarwood recorded a song with him for his 2002 album, Only in Killer City, titled Cutthroats. They were friends, and they stayed in touch enough for Fat Tone to know that Mac Dre was coming to town for Halloween weekend. Witnesses say they saw Fat Tone arguing with Mac Dre over stage time at the National Guard Armory on October the 29th. Dozens of tips recorded by KCPD feature some variation of Fat Tone and Mac Dre getting into an altercation. However, numerous witness statements say this never happened, and police were never able to confirm it. Word on the KC streets is Mac Dre was being very disrespectful to KC natives. He was hella late like what Messy Marv used to do. KC fans didn't like that. Rumors say Mac Dre was spitting on fans and acting very arrogant at the show. FT was doing hit after hit and the crowd wanted him to continue, but the crowd wanted to hear Dre too. But remember, Mac Dre was hella late, so it was some type of argument. KC trappers were also angry with Mac Dre because he was in KC selling Nike boxes full of fake Diz pills. Dre was treating KC gritters like they were goofies, and they didn't like that. This is what the Killer City streets were saying about Mac Dre. Fat Tone and his lawyer met up with Detective Babcock on November the 16th and denied any involvement in the murder, while acknowledging that he heard the rumors about his alleged involvement. He tells Detective Babcock that every time something like this happens, he gets blamed, and that he isn't worried because he knows he did nothing wrong. According to Fat Tone, he hung out with Mac Dre and friends at the hotel the day after he arrived in Kansas City. He'd also been to the show at the Armory, and he remembered Mac Dre briefly inviting him on the stage. When speaking to the detectives in the weeks after the murder, DJ Fresh, who was the sound man and DJ that night, remembered Fat Tone briefly hopping on stage after being invited by Mac Dre. Fat Tone was West Coast friendly, DJ Fresh says. He was the one that everybody knew about over there. In a February 2021 interview, the Kansas City rapper Mr. Stinky said he threw a show at the Atlantic Star the night before Mac Dre's murder, which only added to the confusion later on. It's all tangled up, Mr. Stinky says. He died on Halloween night, and I was throwing a Halloween party the night before, and what makes it even crazier is that Fat Tone shows up at my party and gets into a fight with someone later that night, so everybody's names are intertwining. Mr. Stinky said the incident helped lend credence to the numerous rumors that Fat Tone had gotten into a confrontation with Mac Dre that weekend, even though he said it never happened. Several months later, Fat Tone would release a song where he denied having any involvement in Mac Dre's murder. However, rumors persisted that Fat Tone actually released the song admitting to the crime, although it's never been found. Tone went so far as to deny the slangs in the song, but in the retelling, the song became a confession. Fat Tone killed Mac Dre, Fat Tone killed Mac Dre, Tone Wine, impersonating a grade school tattletale on My Hood Betrayed Me. Fat Tone had a reputation, says Kansas City activist Alonzo Washington. It wasn't like he was the greatest rapper in town, but he would be getting into a lot of trouble with the law, so he had this sort of edgy thing with his music. He used Mac Dre's name to get a little more street cred for his career, but I don't think he did it. In an interview with the Kansas City's The Pitch from 2005, Detective Babcock said that he was convinced that Fat Tone didn't kill Mac Dre. However, that did not stop Fat Tone from facing deadly consequences over the unfounded rumors. Andre, Mac Minister Dow, started being cool with Tone several months after Mac Dre's fateful trip. Dow's claim to fame was twofold. He recorded a verse for Bay Area rapper E40 that laid out the 10 commandments of hip-hop. And he got into a fight with E40 during the National Televised Source Awards in 2000. E40 said he lost a $30,000 gold chain in a melee. Tone met Dow in March during a trip to Las Vegas. Dow seemed to have good connections. He made enough of an impression on Tone that the two of them traveled to New York together. Tone was supposed to give a demo to a guy named Hove that was hooked up with G-Unit and 50 Cent to let them listen to it, says Tone's girlfriend Spencer. They said a lot of people down in New York was feeling his music. He met T.I., he met Lil Scrappy and Young Buck. He really had fun. Tone rewarded Dow by letting him record a skit on the album he was putting together. The only downside to the new friendship was that Dow was constantly asking Tone for money. I would always say that I don't think he actually needs to be giving you no money, Spencer recalls. Fat Tone decided to take a trip to Vegas to handle some business, but he was focused on getting rich by any means necessary. After Fat Tone arrived, he met up with Mac Minister. Dow promised an audience with Snoop Dogg, but the two were not getting along as well as they had before. He felt like Mac Minister was hating on him. Mac Minister kept asking him for money, and he wouldn't give Mac Minister any money. Dow also asked Tone if he could wear Tone's $20,000 gold chain. Fat Tone was close friends with a rapper named Priceless Diamonds. She was Tone's boss bitch. Tone told Priceless he was staying at the MGM Grand, the hotel where his idol Tupac Shakur had attended a boxing match the night he was shot in 1996. And Tone had taken with him a pretty young thing who was supposed to be turning tricks. Even if it was small time, Fat Tone had started pimping. He was up, way up, at the craps table. The only gambling he ever did. Just like Tupac, Tone told Priceless he'd taken $17,000 off the craps table in one session, and then later another $3,000. He told his mother a different amount, $7,000. He was very happy, Wright says. Jamisha Spencer, his girlfriend, heard another figure. Tone told her he turned the $4,000 he took with him into $13,000. He said he was going to wire me some money, but he never did, she said. He also told her he was hoping to meet rappers Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent. To his mother, he said he'd actually be opening for Snoop Dogg's Vegas concert. But Jamisha Spencer says the boasting and balling were only a cover for a more serious quest that had taken Fat Tone to Nevada. Half of it was related to music because this guy, Mac Minister, was supposed to be hooking him up with a lot of different rappers, she says. The other half of the real mission, I can't be specific, she says. All I know is he went out and he was going to handle some business in Vegas. By the weekend, Tone was fed up and wanted to come back to Kansas City, Jamisha Spencer says. Mac Minister told him Snoop Dogg was going to have a concert that Tuesday, she says. There was no need for flying here for a day and then back down there. MGM Grand cameras recorded Mac Minister leaving a hotel with Fat Tone and Cowboy.
Air is the enemy of freshness, spoiling $50 of your food a week on average. Keep food fresh 5 times longer with the...
Fat Tone was having second thoughts. Sometime after 2 a.m. on Monday, May 23rd, after midnight in Las Vegas, he called his girlfriend, Jamisha. She said, he told me he wasn't going to do the particular thing he went down there for. I'm not going through with it. I'm going to come home. Jamisha Spencer recalls, I was kind of asleep. He was like, I'm sitting here waiting on this guy. I'm going to call you as soon as I get to the hotel. A security guard patrolling the Southern Highlands area in the far southwest part of the valley discovered 2 victims shot to death about 2 a.m. May 23rd on a cul-de-sac line with partially built homes. Early on May 23rd, a security guard found the body of 24-year-old Fat Tone in a housing development under construction in southwest Las Vegas. He'd been shot about 20 times and was slumped over the front seats of a blue 1992 Toyota Tercel. A few feet away, 22-year-old Cowboy was on the ground outside the car after being shot 13 times. Both had been shot multiple times in the head, torso, and back with an assault-type rifle. The car was parked in a deserted housing subdivision still under construction. According to Coleon Mathis' arrest warrant, he later admitted to a friend that he had shot Watkins and Atkins to avenge Mac Dre's killing. Mathis said that he shot Watkins, then he chased Atkins into the street and shot him while he was on the ground, pleading for his life, the warrant alleged. A person living in the area told police he heard a noise outside and spotted a white Pontiac Sunfire speeding away from the scene. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Tone's escort was asleep in a doorway outside of his room, apparently finished with her night's work. Not knowing Tone had been killed, Priceless flew out to visit him the next morning as planned. She says he had invited her and had promised to introduce her around. Instead, she collected Tone's escort and came back home. 2 weeks later, Tone was buried on a clear Kansas City Saturday. A small green tent had been erected to shade his white casket. The 150 people who had followed the funeral chapel prayed and hung on to one another for support. 12 watched quietly from a nearby hill. As the procession pulled away, hip-hop boomed from several of the cars.
A rap artist from Kansas City is gunned down and killed in Las Vegas. Tonight, some on the street are wondering, is it revenge for the murder of a West Coast rapper here? Good evening, everyone. That murder last fall in Kansas City is still unsolved.
Now, a Kansas City rapper named Fat Tone is killed in Las Vegas. Peggy Bright is live at Kansas City Police Headquarters with the story. Peggy?
Cali police here knew him as Anthony Watkins. But in the world of hip-hop, he was known as Fat Tone, a 24-year-old rapper who, for sometimes reasons that he did not want, made a name for himself both locally and nationally. But after the murder of Mac Dre, Fat Tone's name began circulating in hip-hop magazines and websites as a possible suspect. Kansas City police followed the sites, but never considered Watkins more than a person of interest. Now Fat Tone is murdered while visiting Vegas. The two murders, months apart, have similarities.
Mac Dre was found in a car, shot to death. The car wrecked, went off the highway, and essentially the same thing happened to Fat Tone.
Activist Alonzo Washington wrote commentaries for hip-hop magazines after Dre's murder. He was concerned that the rumors would generate more violence, and now it has.
When you have an equation of violent music, people with a violent background, and rumors, it can ultimately add up to a real-life homicide, and that's something that we all should try to prevent.
Now, Fat Tone was shot in Kansas City a year and a half ago when he was leaving an interview at a local radio station. He survived that. Las Vegas police are still looking into the motive for this shooting. Another man was killed as well. We're live at police headquarters. Back to you in the studio.
Las Vegas police soon announced that they wanted to speak to 3 people in connection with the crime, but stressed none of them were suspects. Police were also on the lookout for a 2000 Pontiac Sunbird convertible. At the time of the killing, San Francisco promoter Andre McMinister Dow, his friend Jason Mathis, and call girl Lee Danae Larson were in Las Vegas, according to 12. Corleone Mathis had rented a house less than 5 blocks away from the murder scene. Larson, meanwhile, ended up in the Bay Area where she lived out of hotels at times and offered her services as Alana over the Craigslist website. On the night of November the 4th, Fairfield police officers went to a quiet neighborhood after residents reported hearing gunfire. Larson was pronounced dead at the scene from a head wound. A dark-colored SUV was seen speeding away. Soon, Mathis Saturn sedan, which Larson had been driving, turned up burning in Richmond, said Fairfield police. Tony Ship. She had information that could be very damaging, 12 said. The timing of it was uncanny. According to the police, a day after the murders, police received an anonymous message saying they had seen the victim's Toyota and a white Pontiac parked at a house less than a half a mile away from the murder scene. The tipster said he believed drug activity was occurring at the house. Detectives obtained a search warrant to search the house and found photos of Mathis, who lived there, posing with the AK-47 rifle. They also discovered that Mathis had bought ammunition at a Las Vegas gun store 9 days before the killings, according to the police report. Mathis was arrested July the 12th, 2005 in San Francisco for domestic violence involving the mother of his child. She allegedly told police Mathis confessed to killing Fat Tone and Cowboy and that the getaway car, the Pontiac, was burned the next day. The details of the Pontiac being burned had never been made public, 12 noted. According to the woman, Andre McMinister Dow was with Mathis when the murders occurred.
Okay. On the night of the murder, he actually called me when he was still in Las Vegas on his way out. He was gathering some stuff so that he can go. He called me and told me that he had to leave. He couldn't talk. He had to leave. And I'm like, where do you have to go? And he's like, I'm coming out to the Bay Area. I'm gonna get me an apartment and stuff out there. And I need to leave out here real fast. And I'm like, well, what's going on, Jason? And by the way that he was talking, I can tell that it was something that he had done. So I'm like, he asked me, can he come to my house? And he wanted to spend time with his son. Can he come to my house and try to get more acquainted with little Jake, seeing that he was in some trouble out in Las Vegas? And I told him no, because I didn't know what was going on. And then we had spoke a little, a longer, probably like an hour and 2 hours in code. He was trying to tell me what was going on and what he had done, but he wasn't trying to get into details of what had exactly happened.
Tell me how he was talking to you in code. What was he saying?
Okay, he was like, yeah, it was a concert out here tonight, and you heard what happened to them, to the niggas that did that to Mac Dre. I'm like, who are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, we can't speak on what happened. I mean, who they are or whatever. We can't speak on their names or whatever. We can talk more in person when I get to the Bay Area.
This was in the first phone call?
This was the first phone call. And then I'm like, okay, well, where are you? And he said that he was driving out. And when he was saying where he was at and when he was driving out and stuff like that, I was hearing some other people in the background. I heard another girl's voice. I heard like probably 2 to 3 more girls' voice and the guy. And he just was so anxious, telling me he needed to come to my house. He needed to see me right away, and he's leaving. And that was pretty much basically what he said about the murder that happened that night. That wasn't when he actually told me what had happened, but he was telling me in so many words.
All right, now let me ask you this. How do you know that phone conversation you were having with him was on the night that these murders occurred?
Because that's what he said. That's what he said. Not that night, but he said that when we actually met in person, he said that's what that phone call was all about. That's when he defined it, the conversation that we had about that.
When did that happen? When did he?
The next 2 days, probably. I know it wasn't more than 2 days because he was so anxious to see me and to see my son. So probably he had came when he had got to the Bay Area. He had probably gotten comfortable or whatever, and then he actually came over to my house on Northridge.
So he had this conversation with you that night?
Yeah.
And then it lasted for about how long?
For about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Okay. Did he call you at home or on your cell?
He called me on my cell.
Okay. And do you know if he was at his house or on his cell?
He was on his cell.
Okay. How do you know that?
Because when he called me, his number came up.
Okay.
And it wasn't the 408 number he has now. It was another number that he had before this.
All right. And then how long do you think it would have taken him to get up here to the Bay Area?
Probably 7 hours, 8 hours, like that.
And so he didn't call you when you got up here?
No, he didn't call me when he got up here.
Okay, tell me when was the next contact you had with him?
Okay, is when he actually came to my house. He actually called me and told me that he had some gifts and stuff for my son, and he wanted to come over. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what was going on. So I okayed it. I said, okay. So when he came over, then that's when he actually gave me the confession of what he had done and everything, how everything happened, and just everything.
Okay. Tell me about that. Tell me what he said to you.
Okay, he actually told me that, okay, this was planned. What had happened to those two guys was planned. It was rehearsed for like 3 months now. It had been rehearsed for like 3 months now. And he said that Choppa was being cool with the other guys in the little time period of the 3 months. He was being cool. They were talking backwards and forth. He'll call them, they'll call him. And then he got them to trust him so much that he brought them out to Las Vegas.
Who's Chopper?
Chopper is the guy that was supposed to have been with Jason Mathis when everything happened. Is what Jason Mathis said.
Do you know what his real name is?
No. I just know his name is Chopper, and sometimes Jason called him Macman.
Macman?
Yeah, Mac, and then he's a Bay Area rapper, so I mean, everyone knows him.
Okay. Have you ever seen him?
Yes, I've seen him.
If we showed you a picture of somebody, would you recognize it if it was the guy that you know as Chopper?
Of course.
Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then he said to me that Chopper had called the guys and told the guys, oh, hey, you know, I'm in the music industry and I can hook you guys up with Snoop. Snoop is out in Las Vegas right now, and we're gonna meet up at the concert, and you guys can do a show together. So Jason said the guys were believing what Chopper had said to them, and then he lowered them out to the I think it's MGM, the MGM, and he said where they thought that they was gonna go and meet up with Snoop, but then he didn't. I mean, it's really not clear of how he said what had actually happened, but then he skipped and told me that they were in a car, they were sitting in a car, and he had came up to the car with him and Chopper actually together. He had came up to the car, and I don't know if he said he fired the shots into the car, or I think he said he fired the shots into the car that killed the guy instantly.
You're talking about Jason? Jason
Mathis had fired the shots into the car that killed one of the guys instantly, but it didn't kill the other guy. The other guy got out the car and was trying to run, and Jason said the other guy said it was still shots. It was like other shots. Chopper was shooting what was supposed to have been a little gun. Jason said it was little. So I think he said his Chopper gun was little, and his gun was like da 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 da, and Chopper was like bah, bah. Is how he explained it to me. So that's why I'm explaining to you guys. Like that. Okay. So and he's like Chopper's gun was like bah, bah, and he wasn't doing anything. He couldn't kill the other guy because the other guy was already dead that was sitting in the car. And he said he walked up on the guy, and Chopper did shoot him enough times for the guy to fall, and he fell down to the floor. And I guess he didn't say how he turned over or anything, but he just said he got up on the guy, and he had the guy pointed into the gun pointed into the guy's chest, and the guy was saying, "Please don't shoot me. I don't have nothing to do. Please don't shoot me." And then the guy grabbed the gun, and they was struggling with the gun. And then Jay said he just let off the shots into his chest. And then he left the guys there, and he fled the scene real quick. And then you guys didn't know anything about what had happened because nothing is tied to him. And then he also said that when he left Vegas, and then he went back to Vegas to try to gather some of the things and see what was gone. And he said his neighbor had told him that you guys had came in his house and smoke bombs or some sort of something like that, and kicked his door down. And he said he had to replace his door, which he said he did. He replaced his door, and he said he got took his dog. He had a pit bull and I don't. He say, but the name was Chi-Chi. It was a pit bull named Dollar, which was white, and I have a picture of that dog. It was a white pit bull, and then there was another dog that I've never seen before. Okay. Chi-Chi. And so you guys took his dogs, took pictures of my son that was on the walls, and took some shells, and took a bulletproof vest.
Okay. Jason told you all that?
And Jason told me that.
Okay. Did he say when he went back to the house after the murder?
No, he didn't say when, but it wasn't not long after you guys had actually raided his house.
All right, now let me ask you this: if you can try and figure this out, or if you remember anything about what I'm about to ask you here. He came to the Bay Area the night of the murders, is what your understanding is, right?
I think he probably got there the next morning.
Okay. So from the next morning until he came and saw you was how many days?
That was the next morning. That was like a day after.
All right. So when would he have gone back to Vegas from that point? Would it have been before or after he came to see you?
I think it was after he came to see me.
All right, okay. How many times has he talked to you about this?
Often, recently, like every time we were to talk, because they recently had a lot of Mac Dre functions, that like Mac Dre's birthday and stuff like that, like, and he have been going to all these functions to collect money from the Vallejo people that actually had a price on those other guys' heads.
Well, tell me about that. How does this murder that we're investigating tie into Mac Dre?
Because he said Fat Tone was supposed to be the actual guy that killed Mac Dre.
Did you know anything about Mac Dre being killed?
Yeah, I did know about Mac Dre.
What did you know?
Everyone knows that. From what I heard, that Mac Dre had got into a car accident and he had flipped over in a car. So I'm asking Jason, like, I thought it was a car accident. And he said, no, Fat Tone shot Mac Dre and made him get into it, and that which forced him to get into a car accident.
Where did that happen?
In Kansas City.
Okay. How did Fat Tone figure into Kansas City?
I have no idea. Okay. I guess he's supposed to be from, I don't know.
Okay.
But I know that's what he said. Fat Tone killed Mac Dre in Kansas City.
This is your time to cash in at Cash Creek Casino Resort.
How did Fat Tone figure into Kansas City?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I guess he's supposed to be from, I don't know.
Okay.
But I know that's what he said. Fat Tone killed Mac Dre in Kansas City.
Who told you that?
Jason.
Jason. When did he tell you that?
He told me that when the Mac Dre murder actually happened, he had already known what happened. He knew before. It's like because he's in a rap business and he did a lot of things with Mac Dre, like the people that's on Mac Dre's label. He associates with a lot, so he knew right off top what had happened to Mac Dre, and he knew the real story that everybody didn't know. Everyone out here thought that Mac Dre had actually gotten into a car accident. But he was like, no, he came out here and told everybody, no, that's not what happened. Fat Tone actually shot Mac Dre to force him to get into a car accident.
Chanel, let me ask you this. And we have to ask you this because it's something that's going to come up. Okay. This happened the end of May, like 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. And how many times has Jason told you about this? He's told me about
10 times. I estimate about 10 times.
When was the last?
When he was actually trying to fight me. A few days. Yesterday. That was the last time. He said this was his exact words to me. And my brother heard him. As a matter of fact, he told my brother too. He confessed it, live confession to my brother too. He actually told my brother, you better get your sister or it's going to be another murder. She think what happened to Fat Tone was crucial because I always tell him, that's not right. That wasn't right. She think what happened to Fat Tone was crucial. You better get her for it to be another murder.
Are you afraid of Jason?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Okay. The reason I'm asking you that is it's been some time since this happened, and it seems to me that he's told you about this several times, right?
Yes, but I have been in contact with the officer out here. Mm-hmm. His name is Sean Ryan, and we were trying to set up a live. I was trying to get a wire so I can get a live confession from him, but he had caught up to me too soon. Jason had actually caught up to me too soon for me to even get the wire and everything.
Okay, so you know what I was going to ask you, right? How come you haven't called the cops before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I called the cops before.
Okay, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other night when all this happened and Jason went to jail and the girl that was with him sprayed pepper spray or something in you and stuff like that, and is that what caused you to finally say, this is enough?
Yeah, but I was already trying to help with this investigation, but I was trying to do it so like on a down low, so no one would know that it was me actually doing it. So it was taking a little time for me to actually come out and do everything. But I was supposed to be wired, and I agreed to be wired to get a live confession. But he had caught up to me. I was already hiding out from him. He had caught up to me coming from my car to my house. So that's how he actually caught me.
Did Jason ever tell you what happened to the evidence in this case?
He told me it was in a car. He put everything that could have tied him to the Fat Tone's murder in a car and took it to Vallejo, where the guys know Mac Dre at, where Mac Dre was from, and burned it to make it seem like the guys from Vallejo had actually did the Fat Tone murder.
Did he tell you when that happened?
No, he never happened.
Did he say anything about what kind of car or what evidence was in there or anything like that?
I think he said it was I'm not sure, because he's like, when he talked about the car, he only spoke about that like in one conversation. I didn't want to make it seem like I was trying to, get stuff out of him, because then he would have probably turned on me. So I couldn't really keep asking him, well, what did you say was in the car and stuff like that, because I was fearing myself, because he's been domestic on me before too. So, I think he said it was a gun in the car, the gun that was actually used to kill the guys with. I think he said that was in the car. And I don't know, I don't recall, but I think I remember him saying something about the gun.
Do you remember if he said anything about where these guys were killed in relationship to where he was living?
He said it was like 3 blocks down from his house.
Have you ever been to his house?
No, I've never been to his house, but I did see it on the internet though.
What did you see on the internet?
I seen a car parked outside of a garage. I mean, I didn't see his actual house, but I seen like the yellow tape going across, and I seen a car parked out, like right out the front. I don't know if that was his house or it was an apartment building or what, but when I looked on the internet, when he actually told me the internet site, the website to go on, I seen it. I seen the car and the yellow tape, and I seen the picture of it.
Do you remember which website that was?
Yeah, it was Google.com, and you go under Jason Mathis, and then you'll find it. And then another website he told me about, no, it's the same website, but go under fattone.com.
My biggest concern when I was thinking of getting Botox Cosmetic was
losing my expression. I wanted to...
It'll come up too.
Okay. What do you remember coming up on the website when you checked that?
When I checked out Jason's website, it was like a lot of different Jason Mathises. So I had to scroll down and get the one actual one, and then it had.
How do you know it was the actual one?
Because it says the age, and it says 3 suspect murders.
Okay.
One is for questioning, and then it has his age, and it has the girl's age, and then it has Chopper's age. And then I clicked on that, and then that's when their pictures came up.
How did you know that the picture you were looking at was Chopper?
Because I know Chopper.
Okay. You remember what name was under there? Because it wouldn't have been Chopper.
No, it wasn't. It was Minister.
Okay. And what about the other girl?
It was Tanisha. Under it said Tanisha.
Okay. Do you know the last name?
No.
Okay. Do you know what did the website say as far as what Tanisha's involvement was?
I think it said it was her car.
Okay.
But
which car would have been her car?
The car that burned up, that they burned up.
Did Jason say anything to you about what kind of car these guys were driving when they were killed?
Yeah, he said something. He said they were in a bucket. But then when I you can look on the internet and see the guy's car. Mm-hmm. You know, as a matter of fact, when I looked on the internet and seen that car, I don't think that was Jason's house. I think that was the car that the guy was in, because it had the yellow tape going across it. Okay. So I don't think that I've never seen Jason's house.
Okay. But what does the yellow tape mean to you?
It means a crime was committed.
Okay. So why are you thinking that wasn't Jason's house?
Because the car that was sitting in front, I've never seen him drive it.
Okay.
And that's the car that he described to me that the guys were sitting in.
Okay. So are you thinking that the picture you saw on the internet with the yellow tape is where these guys were killed at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would that be different from what Jason told you as far as where these guys were killed at versus where he lives?
Because it's around a construction site where those guys were killed at. And you can see that they had like different pictures. They had a picture of the guy's car with the yellow tape, and they had the picture of the like where it was around the southern. I think they said it was the southern heights. You know, I don't recall, but so Jason. Well, you know, they did have a picture of Jason's house. They did. Because it was like a few pictures. And it was a picture where they said renter. It said Jason Mathis renter house. Mm-hmm. And then it had like the door gone and like the windows were gone. And it does. It has that on the internet.
Now, is that the same house that you were looking at that had the yellow tape around it?
No. It was like the house that had the yellow tape had a blue car sitting there.
Okay.
And that was up here. And then there was another picture. It's like I could have clicked on the pictures and it would have got, you know the internet. Yeah. So it was like a few pictures. Mm-hmm. And then one was the yellow tape with the car. One was a house that looked like it was damaged. And then the other one was like a construction site that was around it.
Okay. Chanel, one thing that's important for us to know is what you learned about this investigation on the internet and what you learned from Jason directly. So I need to be able to know myself what Jason told you separate from what you learned on the internet. Okay. So can you explain to me that?
What Jason told me was that his house had got raided by the police and you guys had confiscated a few items of his, which couldn't lead him to the murders of the actual guys. And you guys went in there looking for you guys were looking for a fingerprint and hair and other type of forensic things, trying to say that the guys were in his house. But he said the guys never been in his house, so you guys couldn't find anything.
What guys was he talking about?
He was talking about Fat Tone and the other guy.
Okay. So he's talking about the dead guy?
Yeah, dead guy.
All right.
And he also told me that how the murder was committed, how he did it, which wasn't in the internet at all, of how everything had happened, wasn't in the internet at all, and about the evidence that was in the car wasn't in the internet, but what was in the internet that the car did get blew up, that was in the internet.
Did you read that yourself?
No, I didn't read that. But he told me it was in it because I didn't know that any of this was on the internet. He had already pulled it up.
The car that blew up, you meant the car that was shot up?
No, the car that got took out to Vallejo and was blown up.
That was burned up?
Yeah, that was burned up. Yeah.
Jason told you that wasn't on the internet?
Jason told me that wasn't on the internet.
So, what else did Jason tell you was or wasn't on the internet?
Okay, he said the picture of his house was on the internet. He said the picture of the guy's car was on the internet. And he also told me to look up Fat Tone's website, and he told me it was all his friends and stuff was talking. Fat Tone's friends was talking on the internet, and he also told me that they got the story about Fat Tone had just killed someone that was on the internet.
Okay. So, what can you tell me that you believe is critical information about this murder that was not on the internet that Jason told you?
Okay, he told me of how the murder exactly happened.
Okay.
That's what I think I know that's not on the internet because I've looked on the internet and it's not on the internet how it actually happened. And then the actual time that he did it and the actual time that the bodies were found. And I don't know how he knows when the bodies were found. Okay. You know, because maybe the news do say a lot, and maybe the news said that they found the bodies at 4 a.m. or however.
Jason Mathis said he believed Anthony Fatone Watkins killed San Francisco Bay Area rapper Andre McDre Hicks in Kansas City in November 2004. He told 12 he committed the murders out of revenge. He is also accused of killing Watkins' friend, Jermaine Atkins. According to Mathis, the motive for the killing was revenge, his arrest report says. In 2005, police pulled Dow over near the Golden Gate Bridge and he fled the scene. In his abandoned car, police reportedly found a documentary Mac Minister had produced about his life and an article about the murders of Cowboy and Fat Tone. He was arrested a month later by California Highway Patrol and subsequently released. In November 2005, he was indicted on 2 counts of murder and conspiracy to commit murder, but he remained at large. While on the run, Dow recorded the intro to the game's Doctor's Advocate. Shortly after being featured on Fox's America's Most Wanted, the rapper was finally apprehended by police in a San Francisco apartment in March 2006. Mac Minister and Coleon Mathis were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Back in case.
Throughout life's ups and downs, you've always kept your sense of style. Go you.
See, Damon Whitmill was heard bragging about sending Papoose and Smith to kill Mac Dre over a failed concert arrangement. Damon Whitmill made a concerted effort to spread rumors that Kansas City rapper Fat Tone had been responsible for the killing, even though Damon knew he was innocent. Over a dozen witnesses and informants reported seeing Calvert Papoose, Antoine II, driving a black Infiniti, with multiple witnesses saying that he even paid to tint the windows in the month before the murder. Antoine and a friend asked them if they wanted to go to a rap concert on the night Mac Dre was murdered, according to the anonymous tip. The tipster declined and later saw both Antoine and the other man burning their clothes in an alleyway visible from their house around the time of the murder. After that night, the black Infiniti was gone. Antoine was heard bragging about being paid to kill Mac Dre while incarcerated at CCA Leavenworth. Teron T-Baby Smith was also mentioned as having been seen with Antoine in a black Infiniti numerous times in the month leading up to the murder. And according to Missouri State Court records, Smith and Antoine was arrested together less than 6 months after Mac Dre's murder on March 7, 2005. They've been spotted by KCPD in a stolen van near 59th Street and Blue Hills Road and had attempted to evade 12 by jumping out and hiding in a nearby backyard. Police found drugs and multiple firearms, including an AR-15 assault rifle, the same type of weapon used in Mac Dre's shooting. Yet another informant, Nicholas Bell, also incarcerated at CCA Leavenworth, told detectives a similar story on March 13, 2006. Bell's lawyer had reached out to detectives saying that their client had information regarding 2 murders, Mac Dre's being one of them. In March 2006, Bell told detectives that Antoine and Smith had been bragging about the murder, saying that Smith had told them that he'd been paid $10,000 to perform the hit. Bell told detectives he's not sure what to believe, considering that everyone said they had something to do with the murder at some point. Detective Babcock met with Antoine numerous times in the years after the murder and he repeatedly denied having any involvement. But on March 13, 2006, Antoine finally admitted to detectives that he had been in possession of the black Infiniti used in Mac Dre's murder. He claimed to have sold the car to Fat Tone on the day before Halloween. Detective Babcock noted that he didn't believe Antoine was being truthful. Teron T-Baby Smith was shot and killed on the morning of June 12, 2010. His body was found in a light-colored Chevy Blazer at the intersection of 73rd and Indiana near the Noble and Gregory Ridge area of Kansas City, Missouri. Almost 10 years later, Antoine was murdered in an incident eerily similar to Mac Dre's death. In March 2014, local news reported that Antoine had been found dead in an upside-down SUV riddled with bullets. Police said the crash happened as a result of the victim attempting to flee a shooting. According to KCPD, witnesses said they heard gunshots before seeing a silver Dodge Charger leaving the scene. Just like Smith, Kansas City police never arrested anyone in Antoine's murder, and there's no proof it's connected to Mac Dre's shooting. In the weeks after Fat Tone's death, the streets of Kansas City seen a frightening rise in violent street crime, shootings, assaults, and seemingly random attacks. One of the victims was an aunt of Fat Tone's, Jerry Watkins, who was killed just 18 days after Tone in a shooting at 1200 East Linwood. Local media reported that some sort of tie might exist between Fat Tone's death and the rash of killings. Tone's mother has taken over his career. I am Fat Tone, she insists. She's been printing up more CDs and plans to release an album of previously unreleased music in October.
Yo, so there you have it, man. Nobody still, as of today, has been arrested for the murder of Mac Dre. The two guys that claimed the murder, both has been gunned down and murdered. Damon Whitefall, the promoter, he seemed kind of janky to me. Only because it's like, okay, he was mad, and that's understandable. Like, you spend your money for artists, you pay, you want the artist to show up on time because you're paying them to be there, so you need everything to go right, so you can get your money back on the back end. But they said Dre was late to the autograph signing. He was also late to the radio appearance, which was the radio appearance was set up to promote both of the shows. Now, it was another show. It was two shows that weekend. He was paid $12,500. He got half the money up front. He's supposed to get the other half once he got there. Now, the second show, Dre arrived late to as well. End up leaving the show, you know what I'm saying, perform. And the promoter had to come out the pocket to book the venue for an extra hour because Dre showed up 30 minutes after the time that he was supposed to perform. So then the promoter was like, okay, well, that didn't go right, Dre. Let's see if we could do another show. I could get some of that bread back. Booked the Halloween show. The Halloween show, Dre was late again, they said, and never performed. He left early and never performed. Now, all this is allegedly. Kansas City, the streets of Kansas City, they're saying that, you know, they felt that Mac Dre was kind of disrespected them by showing up late to the crowd, showing up late to the shows, coming to one show, not performing, coming to the autograph signing, leaving early. And, you know, they just felt like, damn, he walking all over us. And then it was said that, I don't know how true this is, it was said that the KC trappers, like the Doughboys, the D-Boys in the city, was saying that Dre was coming out there selling fake Thiz pills. Now, I don't know how true that is. That don't sound like nothing Mac Dre would do for being around. But Fat Tone got into a fight the same night as the Halloween show, the third show, the same night where all this happened. Fat Tone got into a fight at a different venue. It wasn't at the same venue that Dre was performing at. It was at a different venue. Now, that's how Fat Tone kind of got thrown in the mix, because it was like, oh, Tone and Dre got into it, which they didn't get into it. Dre and Tone was cool, like, you feel me? But when that happened to Dre, Fat Tone never denied, like, it was rumors going around that Fat Tone had something to do with it. Fat Tone never denied those rumors. He never denied not killing Dre. And what that probably did for him was boosted his street cred, like boosted his career or whatever. It was, I don't know, but to me, it wasn't the smart thing to do, because Fat Tone is no longer here with us today. Damon Whitmill, like I said, that was the promoter. He seemed kind of janky. Like, I don't know. Like, he had motives to me. Like, out of everybody, he had motives. But Damon Whitmill, sorry, he called Davila. Davila was Dre partner when Dre, every time Dre fly up to Kansas City, Davila was the guy that Dre tapped into. Davila was the guy that gave them the white van to drive Dre around that night to get Dre to the shows, to get Dre to the radios, to get Dre to the autograph signing. So Davila was Dre partner. Now, Damon Whitmill, which is the promoter, called Davila to ask. This is what I thought was janky. He called Davila to ask to see where was Mac Dre at. And this was after the third show, after the Halloween show, after Mac Dre came to the show, showed up late, and never performed. He left without performing. The promoter called Davila, damn, hey, where's Dre? That right there was kind of janky to me. I don't know what that was about. If it was the call about, hey, I'm trying to give Dre the rest of his money, or what. But like that right there just seemed janky. The promoter seemed janky. He also declined to provide a DNA sample. Like, why? Look, if this my partner, I'm booking you for a show. You come out here to my city and get killed, and I know I ain't have nothing to do with it. I'm not gonna decline no DNA sample. And that's just that, fam. Like off the rip, like, oh yeah, you wanna let's do it. Just to clear my name. You feel me? But to deny the DNA sample is like, what are you hiding, Brody? I don't know. But then the end, like, man, Coleon, which is Jason. Now Jason is charged with Mac Minister both for killing Fat Tone and the other guy, Cowboy, right? So Jason Coleon was pillow talking to his baby mama. Wow, this look, rule number one, keep females out of street business, right? Somebody said that in the comments too. Boss Biz. I don't know if you still on here, Boss Biz, but you had said that in the comments. But man, look, stop pillow talking with these females, man, because when the pressure get on them, they go fold. Like they go fold. So she told the detectives probably stuff that they didn't even know. Like she told the detectives that Jason Coleon, who is now locked up for the murder of Fat Tone, she told them that Jason was going to the shows, to the theater shows. This is after Dre death. Jason was going to the theater shows to collect money because Mac Dre friends had money on Fat Tone head. Like that right there is just something like why? Why does she need to know that? She didn't need to know anything at all. Like nothing at all. She didn't know nothing about what happened, the whole situation. Like that's where I felt like he went wrong. And that's probably how him and Mac Minister got caught. I'm not sure how they got caught up, but like she told them a lot of key, like she told them a lot of key things that nobody else knew. Like who would know that? Who would know this information? She even tried to wear a wire, like to set him up to get a live confession. And this is again, this is his baby mama. Man, stop talking to these females. Look, I don't know what y'all think. Uh, you feel me? They were saying, "Oh, Fat Tone did it." I don't think Fat Tone did it. They saying the Bay Area, somebody from the Bay killed Dre. I don't believe that either. You feel me? It was kind of believable 10, 15 years ago. Right now it's not believable. This story here is my first time hearing some of this stuff. Some of it I already heard, but a lot of stuff was my first time hearing. Like his baby mama giving that whole testimony, like to the detectives. That's my first time hearing all that. And Dre selling fake Thiz pills. I never heard that before. You feel me? Um, Dre showing up late and not performing. I never heard that before. But it's a lot of janky stuff. Let me know what y'all think, man, in the comments. Man, you feel me? We ain't trying to solve this case. This case is still unsolved. We ain't here to solve the case, man. But let me know what y'all think down below in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. Thank y'all for tuning in to Yadada TV, man. You feel me? I'm out.